Welcome. I'm Tracy Smith, and this is Here Comes the Sun, a closer look at some of the people, places, and things we bring you every weekend on Sunday morning. Owen Wilson's singular style doesn't limit his range. He starred in everything from blockbusters to rom-coms. But as he told our Ben Mankiewicz, it was a momentous math test that put him on a path to fame.
Wilson never thought about acting in school. School, in fact, was a bit of a challenge. His high school expelled him.
I got kicked out for cheating in geometry. I was the only kid that was caught, that was kind of called in.
Wilson could have saved himself if he'd been willing to identify the other kids involved.
You wouldn't name names.
I didn't name names.
So off he went at 16 to the New Mexico Military Institute.
I did pretty well. I got good grades, and like all these things, it ends up being a better story.
Later in the show, Owen Wilson's filmography as ranked by his kids.
Do your kids watch Zoolander? I want to talk about
Zoolander. Yeah. My 9-year-old, he said that was his favorite of the movies that I've done. He said he liked You, Me, and Dupree and Zoolander. And then my 12-year-old, he said, he says Bottle Rocket.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That suggests he's got a little...
Well, it makes me think, like, does he just kind of know me and know that's the one that's going to make me feel the best? There might be. It doesn't matter.
Either way, it's a good
Either
answer.
way,
Right, either way.
Then Conor Knighton gets a front row seat to a week-long festival that started as a cross-country ski race, but became a celebration.
The American Birkebeiner is the largest cross-country ski race in the country, and the enthusiasm here is contagious.
We all got the Birkie fever, and it's just the excitement that builds about not only the race, but the whole event of Birkie Week.
The official Birkebeiner race, Birkie for short, can fly by in a couple of hours for the most elite skiers. But leading up to the main event, there are days of activities.
That's all coming up right here on Here Comes the Sun. Owen Wilson may dislike talking about himself, but he had plenty to tell Ben Mankiewicz about his films, the characters he plays, and his journey to the silver screen.
The Rolling Stones.
Yeah. Rembrandt would be, he could be like Sinatra.
While the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles is an unlikely haunt for a Hollywood star,
A Van Gogh.
Owen Wilson is not your average A-lister.
Now look at this color here. Yeah, there's something that inhibits me from talking about a painting on camera.
Right.
Because I can't get over that.
In person or on screen,
You'll show my novel to Gertrude Stein?
that self-effacing charm is undeniable.
I even started to say brushstrokes, and I was like, don't say brushstrokes.
Wilson continues to carve out a varied movie career.
Do you, some guy, take Kat to be your lawfully wedded wife?
Okay.
As a romantic lead, in action movies, and his signature comedies.
Have you even shot one of these things before?
The whole 17 years we've known each other, I've been sneaking off to go on little hunting trips around the world. No, I don't even know what the quail is.
Whether as an uninvited guest with Vince Vaughn in Wedding Crashers, or engaging in a dance-off with Ben Stiller in Zoolander.
Just splash it onto there. Don't worry, it's not rocket science.
His latest is Paint,
It's harder.
PBS Burlington.
an offbeat comedy where Wilson plays a painter hosting a TV show at a PBS station in Vermont.
Carl is one-dimensional and very sexist. You know I don't care what people say about me.
The work and the success remain a bit of a surprise to him.
I definitely consider myself lucky. Making a living doing something creative, that seems incredible.
Incredible, but not improbable for a kid raised around the arts in Dallas. His mother is a photographer. His father, like Wilson's latest character, has a PBS connection.
We have to move right into our programming, which is, after all that really counts.
Running the first PBS station in the States to air a show featuring a certain British comedy troupe.
He puts on women's clothing and hangs around in bars. He's an upper decker diesel.
They were the first station to carry Monty Python. Years later, I met Terry Gilliam, and he said, we're incredibly grateful your dad gave us a big break.
Wilson never thought about acting in school. School, in fact, was a bit of a challenge. His high school expelled him.
I got kicked out for cheating in geometry. I was the only kid that was caught, that was kind of called in.
Wilson could have saved himself if he'd been willing to identify the other kids involved.
You wouldn't name names.
I didn't name names.
So off he went at 16 to the New Mexico Military Institute.
I did pretty well. I got good grades, and like all these things, it ends up being a better story.
He ended up in college at the University of Texas, where a friend from military school introduced him to another student.
Without that thing happening, then, Wes and I probably don't become friends.
Wes is writer-director Wes Anderson, who became Wilson's roommate at Texas and his lifelong friend. They've made 8 movies together, including The Royal Tenenbaums and The Grand Budapest Hotel. Not long after college, they co-wrote their first feature, Bottle Rocket, with Anderson directing and Wilson playing the lead.
Did you hear that?
I did Bottle Rocket, and people started hiring me, and it was like, well, it took a few movies before I could sort of accept or say, I guess this is what I do. I'm an actor. I guess I'm an actor.
As an actor, Wilson, with his unique, boyish good looks and those blonde locks, soon morphed into a scene stealer prone to ad-lib, like this bit here in Meet the Parents with Robert De Niro, who was clearly impressed.
I'd love to find time to do some volunteer work. Just the other day I saw this golden retriever that he had like a gimp with a paw was hurt, and it broke my heart.
Owen Wilson is entirely comfortable discussing his characters. Talking about himself is a different story.
Why are you guarded with your emotions? Has he always been that way?
I think just growing up in Dallas, to have said you wanted to be an actor and be in movies would have sounded, okay, yeah, me too. And then I want to go win the lottery after that. It would have just sounded ridiculous.
That guardedness is understandable. In 2007 came a widely reported story that Wilson had attempted suicide. He doesn't discuss it publicly, but he has said that his family played a big role in his recovery. His older brother, Andrew, moved in with him for a bit after he left the hospital. He's still clearly a big influence.
That's a great feeling when you've got some backup. And my older brother has continued always to be kind of, somebody who's helped me a lot.
The Wilson brothers, Andrew, Owen, and Luke, also a successful actor, are still close.
It's like that Paul Simon song, I'm with the boys, my troops, late in the evening.
Right. And what draws you to places like this?
There is something about going into a museum that is just sort of a little bit meditative. It's like going to like a church or a cathedral. You kind of feel good afterwards.
The museum brings him peace of mind and perhaps a little inspiration for his latest film.
Is that Rembrandt? Well, this reminds me of that app where it matches you to an old classic. It's never very flattering. And I'll be like, really? That's the likeness for me?
I mean, the hair. Carl.
The hair. That's Carl Nargle. Yeah. Carl Nargle.
Nargle is Wilson's character in Paint.
That tree is probably too tall. Brace yourself, you are going to get some calls.
Clearly inspired by Bob Ross, who hosted a PBS painting show for 11 years, starting in 1983.
Let's have another one. Maybe he lives. Soup right there.
His slow, soothing voice and permed hair have remained ubiquitous on the internet.
Did you watch Bob Ross?
Yeah, but I can't quite do an imitation. Let's just take it all in.
Wilson didn't get Ross's voice down, but he got Ross's essence, and he made the character funny.
How is everything? It's good. Good thing.
Which is what Owen Wilson has been doing since he was a kid.
You're entitled to your favorite TV show. It's what makes this country great.
You think you're a good actor?
I don't think that I'm, good. I do think there's some, I think there's some parts that I think I can play well.
Yeah, well, I got news for you. You're a good actor.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Up next, an exclusive excerpt from Owen Wilson's chat. you can only see right here on CBS News Streaming. Stay with us. As promised, here's more from Ben Mankiewicz and Owen Wilson.
Your parents seem very interesting. I had some interesting parents, so I like interesting parents. But how would you assess the manner in which they shaped you?
Yeah, I think that, I think one of the big things was, kind of having dinners as a family, and then my dad just had great friends, that would come over, and so it was kind of, sitting there and kind of hearing these kind of smart, funny guys and women, and we all kind of idolized my dad a little bit, and so we just really kind of pay attention, and he had a great sense of humor, and they did interesting things.
Do your kids watch Zoolander? I want to talk about
Zoolander. Yeah, my 9-year-old, he said that was his favorite of the movies that I've done. He said he liked You, Me, and Dupree and Zoolander, and then my 12-year-old, he said, he says Bottle Rocket, but
that's nice.
Yeah.
That suggests he's got a little.
Well, it makes me think, like, does he just kind of know me and know that's the one that's going to make me feel the best? There might be. It doesn't matter.
Either way, it's a good
Either
answer.
way,
Right? Either
right.
way, he's being a really thoughtful, kind
Based
person.
on his other viewing, if I was to do an algorithm, Bottle Rocket is standing out from the other movies.
Wedding Crashers too old for them? It's probably.
I haven't seen Wedding Crashers.
Have they seen Meet the Parents?
I don't know if they've seen Meet the Parents. I'm not sure. They've seen, The Night at the Museums.
Yeah, of course.
They like that character. I like that character, Jedediah.
Jedediah. Wedding Crashers is an incredibly funny movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we were really lucky with, I just think Vince, I think he's so funny and just, exactly,
But you and he
gifted.
You feel like you guys have a similar manner of being funny.
Yeah, I don't think that I have a similar, I have, just a big appreciation I just think he's, one of the funniest people, and that could be just in real life too. If I was, walking around in a museum with Vince, he's going to say some stuff that I'm going to remember and want to write down. And just has a funny manner. And then Will Ferrell also, and his character in that I thought was great.
So you're doing Loki.
Yeah.
But if you mentioned
I really like that character actually. Yeah, the character Mobius that I play on Loki, and I loved working with Tom Hiddleston, and talk about someone. He went to Cambridge, and if you want to sit around and what's this Shakespeare? He'll be able to dial it up, and he's also just has that incredible politeness but really hardworking. You sort of I kidded about with Tom Hiddleston. You kind of see okay, yeah, that's how that little island nation kind of built an empire. They had they have that Keith Richards type, and then they have, that Tom Hiddleston type. Kind of, we're talking about, not really seeing myself as a fighter pilot, but I do see myself kind of, that kind of, in that genre of kind of a detective.
Do you have some freedom in that when you come up with an idea?
Yeah. And they kind of, we just finished season 2. That we shot in London, and a month before we kind of were rehearsing and working on, the scripts.
I think it was in that Esquire piece. Maybe it was in something else, but I like that when you doing the press for Loki, and you're like, why is everybody asking me they're like, what got you to do this? You don't know anything about the Marvel universe, and you were like, no, but I know. And then you're like, well, actually, maybe I don't.
Yeah. Well, no, the one that they were asking me in the article, do you know? Everyone was seeming to say, I don't know anything about Marvel movies, and I was like, that's not true. I do. My kids were just watching Aquaman, so I watched Aquaman, and and I actually got into an argument with them about like, how could somebody swim in blue jeans? Like, that's the worst thing, like, you know. And they were like, well, Dad, he's gonna, and I go, yeah, but I mean, right there, they lose me. And so, and then I guess Aquaman isn't even a Marvel movie, that's a DC.
Maybe you don't know it.
Yeah,
Right.
so maybe I don't know that much about it.
Up next, an American event inspired by Norwegian history. Welcome back. Each year, thousands of athletes and enthusiasts descend on a small community in Wisconsin for the largest, and as Conor Knighton shows us, what just might be the most entertaining cross-country ski race in the country.
Berkey fever, got me eager as a beaver, got me waiting for winter, got me praying for snow. Berkey fever, I'm a true believer, just get me to the start line, I'll be ready to go. We're underway!
Each winter, thousands of cross-country skiers from all across the world travel to the North Woods of Wisconsin to travel more than 30 miles between the towns of Cable and Hayward. The American Birkebeiner is the largest cross-country ski race in the country, and the enthusiasm here is contagious.
We all got the Berkey fever, and it's just the excitement that builds about not only the race, but the whole event of Berkey Week.
The official Birkebeiner race, Berkey for short, can fly by in a couple of hours for the most elite skiers. But leading up to the main event, there are days of activities. There are shorter races for children. There's a Barkey, where dog lovers ski with their pets. Teams of 6 compete in giant ski races.
It's kind of like Comic-Con for athletes is how I'm looking at it.
Jackie and Dan DeRoma are avid skiers. Jackie has skied the Berkey 4 times, Dan 17. But for this year's race, they wanted to do things a little differently.
These other racers are going to be in spandex, Gore-Tex, you know. Yep. What are you going to be wearing?
Full on fur.
Jackie, Dan, and Dan's father, Jim, were selected to be mascots of sorts, skiing the entire course on wooden skis, dressed as Norwegian folk heroes, all while carrying a baby doll. It's a tradition with roots in a far older history.
Inga, hør. Vi tar vare på ham. Du har mitt ord.
As portrayed in the film The Last King, in the early 13th century, Norway was in the middle of a civil war. After King Håkon III died, members of the Birkebeiner faction skied his son, the heir to the throne, through the woods to safety. Each year in Wisconsin, 3 skiers reenact the rescue.
I think the fact that there is this real story about an event that now you're recreating it, I think that's pretty darn cool and pretty special, and I think it resonates with a lot of people.
Ben Popp is the executive director of the American Birkebeiner, which is modeled after a Norwegian race. There, every competitor skis with a baby-weight backpack to honor the warrior's journey. Of course, you may be asking yourself,
why is this crazy Norwegian history have anything to do with Hayward, Wisconsin, in the middle of northwestern Wisconsin, nowhere? It all came down to one man, Tony Wise.
Tony Wise was born in Hayward and was a born marketer. After serving in World War II, he decided to bring the competitive skiing he observed in Europe back home to Wisconsin, a place where Scandinavian ancestry is common, as a way to encourage tourism. His first Berkey race, held 50 years ago, had just 35 participants, most of whom had never cross-country skied before.
I swore up and down after that first I would never do anything so foolish again, but...
And they're off, ladies and gentlemen.
Ernie St. Germain is the only competitor who's participated in every single race. But there are more than 2,000 athletes who have appeared in 20 or more contests, which can turn into grueling all-day endeavors. The Berkey attracts skiers of varying ages and ability levels.
You're really going to discover who you are. It's one of the toughest marathon courses in the world.
So let yourself kind of glide a little. There you go. Good.
That challenge is what attracts elite skiers like Olympian Caitlin Gregg, who's won the women's race a record-setting 5 times.
The Berkey course is unlike any other ski course that we get to race, not only here in the United States, but also around the world. And I think that its terrain is so unique and so challenging that people just myself included, love that aspect of it.
The race itself has faced challenges posed by warmer winters. In recent decades, it's been canceled twice due to lack of snow.
It's really important that we look at climate change and weather, because if we don't have it, well, it's a big loss.
The event provides a major boost for the local economy. This town of fewer than 3,000 residents hosts close to 40,000 spectators. On race day, Hayward's Main Street overflows with cheering fans caught up in Berkey fever,
for which the only prescription is more cowbell. The church bells signal the arrival of the first finisher.
David Norris won this year's men's race with a commanding lead. Caitlin Gregg came in third in the women's division. But the biggest cheers of the day were reserved for the Doromas. Nearly 7 hours after leaving the starting line, they skied onto Main Street and swapped out the baby doll for an actual baby.
Are we gonna save you today?
Their daughter Clara played the part of Prince Haakon for the final few blocks. The Birkebeiners saved the day, until they do it all again next year.
I'll be ready to go. Get me to the start line, I'll be ready to go.
I'm Tracy Smith. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you here next time on Here Comes the Sun.